I am Lequita Brooks, your social impact speaker and strategist. Welcome to Social Impact Sundays, where we have massive impact, which leads to massive income. I am so excited to have Crystal Calloway on here today. She is all the way from Japan. So when they say, I know, right? So when they say social workers only do this and that, like, listen, she's an international social worker, grief social worker. She's in private practice. And matter of fact, she specializes in military transitions and also loss, because loss can be so much bigger than loss as in death. When you're in the military or you're even a military spouse like Crystal, loss comes in so many ways. There are benefits, but then there's also the loss of just being in the United States, the loss of being near family. So enough of me talking. Crystal, tell us about you, what you have going on, all the way from Japan.
Yes, well, konnichiwa to you, Lequita, and your audience. I'm just so excited to be here. Yeah, it's 2 a.m. here, so I'm very excited. Yes, as you mentioned, I am a military spouse. I've been a military spouse for 27 years. My husband is in the United States Air Force. We have 4 children, and I am a social worker. We moved here about 3 months ago. And as you mentioned, the loss, I am I consider myself an international social worker because we are in Japan, where I do have a private practice. And I'm practicing in a group setting with other clinicians like ourselves. But while I was here, I did experience a small depression, or a short stint of depression, I should say. Just grieving really the loss of leaving my friends, my family, a job that I love. And so I am passionate about grief, because grief is much more than just grieving the loss of a loved one. Sometimes people think it's just death, right? And so I experienced that no, grief is, you can grieve loss of income, loss of situations, loss of being in the United States and taken for granted, the necessities that we have in the United States that aren't so accessible when you come to another country.
And I'm so glad you mentioned accessibility, because that's one of the things that you mentioned is how you're planning to launch some support groups and some group coaching initiatives while you're there in Japan, to not only, support people that's in the United States that you're currently supporting as a therapist, but also utilizing some of those same skills to offer group coaching and support groups. So tell us a little bit more about your support groups to support military personnel, spouses.
I will begin to have support groups, and I will be coaching military members and or their spouses just on grief, and just on not only the stages of grief, of coping mechanisms, right? Because it's great to understand, hey, what is grief? But being all the way over here in Japan, it is different than being in the United States, because mental health is just seen differently, right? And so sometimes with the military, as though it is a great opportunity. So we're here with different branches. So not only Air Force, but Marines, Coast Guard, Navy. And so sometimes you don't always have that accessibility of, there's long waiting periods for you to get counseling. So what's going to be great here is that I've decided that I'm going to start a support group virtually and maybe in person for those that are actually here in Japan, where we can talk about grief and we can help support each other, and they can help support each other with grief, and then also the coping mechanisms to get through sometimes what doesn't maybe seem like a tough time for others. People are like, well, you're here in Japan, it's a beautiful country, and it is. I've only been here 3 months, right? So many beautiful experiences. However, there are tough moments as well. So I'm going to start that support group so that those that are here, military and or their spouses, can have that extra support that they need.
I love that. The social worker in you're like, you know what? There's a need. I'm going to offer a solution that's going to not only support you and just having more impact, but also support others. Because like we said, you've been there for 3 months. It's been a transition for you. And some of the same things you're going through, you can also see how having a support group would benefit others.
Absolutely. And, speaking to my husband, because, in social work, even talking to you, Lequita, we were talking about niches, right? What's your niche? And sometimes we're all over the place. Like when you spoke to me and I'm like, well, I'm passionate about this and I want to do that. But when we talk about niche, I'm very passionate about grief. And the reason is about 7 years ago, I lost my mother. And I just felt, doing that transition, that when she was dying, even though I'm a social worker and my specialty, I was in hospice. I did my undergrad in hospice. So I understood the dying process and what would go with that. However, no one prepared me for the grief afterwards, right? And so I was always, going through that transition. I'm like, man, grief is something that we don't talk enough about, especially in our community, in the African American community. We just don't talk enough about grief, and we'll say, well, she's depressed or she's anxious. Well, those things are just components of the grief. Those things can be true. And I learned that everyone grieves differently, right? So for me, when I lost my mom, I went into shopping. So that was my coping mechanism, right? Some people, their coping mechanism may be drugs or alcohol or, the internet, gambling. Mine was shopping. It wasn't a healthy coping mechanism, right? So that really pushed me to say hey, go get your grief certification. Go get serious about really toning your craft, right? And so even speaking with you and you're like, hey, what's your niche? I have been really thinking about, hey, what is it when I'm here in Japan? How can I really make the most of my 3 years here? Because I don't just want to be here, and not make the most of it. I became a social worker because I'm passionate about serving and really letting someone be their authentic selves and taking their hand and walking them through the process. So I was like, oh man, my husband was saying, what can you do? What is it that you want to do? And grief just kept coming up over and over and over again. And again, it doesn't have to just mean loss. Hopefully, yes, I will do some sessions on loss for death. But I think that talking about, hey, if you're over here in this country as a military member or spouse and you're grieving, how can the group support you through that time?
So first, I want to say my condolences. And I think it's amazing how you took your passion, your life experience, your expertise, and now actually utilizing all of that. Because a lot of times we just think about, oh, it's about having a degree or about certifications. No, it's all of it. It's your life experiences. It's your education. It's the different certifications, all those things. And now you're doing the groups in Japan. And I want to say also, you're seeing therapy clients in the States. So what states are you certified or have your license in to provide therapeutic services in case anyone wants to reach out to you for therapy? Which states are those?
So I am certified in Virginia, Hawaii, DC, and Florida. I'm currently working on Maryland and North Carolina. So I'm certified in 4 states right now. And again, that came out of a need, right? Seeing that, hey, there's a need in these states. And so, yes, I can see clients for therapeutic counseling, for grief and other things in those states.
That's the thing I just love about social work. Like, you are truly dismantling everything that everybody says what social workers do or who they are. You're an international social worker. You're a social worker that specializes in grief. You're licensed in 4 different states, it sounds like right now. You're also going to be licensed in a few more states to still provide therapy while you're living in Japan. So listen, we have Crystal right here who's living in Japan, and she's still providing therapy services to individuals that live in the States. So it's possible for you to live anywhere in the world, especially now where we have the internet and all these other HIPAA compliant platforms. Yes. So Crystal is living in Japan, still seeing clients in the States. And now she's also going to be seeing clients for coaching per se, and support groups actually in Japan within the military and military spouses. So, oh my goodness, you are just dismantling what people think social workers are. So we can, like we talked about earlier, being able to be valued, respected, and well compensated. So, Crystal, how can people find you?
So people can find me on social media. So my social media is Healing Roots Together. On Facebook, you can find me. And then on my emails, you can find me at healingrootstogether@gmail.com. So if you want to, connect with me, talk to me, I do have a Japanese number. So right now, I think that the email would be the best source, or the Facebook page, to contact me. And then we can do a Zoom or something like that. But right now, I think those would be the best sources.
Crystal, so you have said so much just about grief, how it's so much bigger than the loss of actual death. You know, the loss of employment, the loss of family, the loss of being in your normal surroundings. So, what advice would you give to, a fellow social worker or someone just a regular human being, just living life in this world? What advice would you give?
My advice is, be your authentic self. And if you know that, hey, you're struggling in a couple areas, or you're struggling in one or two areas, or you're grieving, it could even be, hey, I'm going through a divorce or a separation, seek a counselor out, seek us out, because there are counselors who are passionate. There are counselors who really want to take your hand. Again, I always tell my clients, hey, if you're looking to me to solve your problems, I'm not that person, right? I'm not going to solve your problems, but I am going to give you the tools to work with you so that you can solve your problems, because everyone has that power inside them. Sometimes you just need someone to come alongside you, take your hand, maybe light that little spark that may have went out. However, everyone has that light. I believe that everyone has a light. It may be flickering, it may be, shining a little bright, but everyone has a light inside of them. So I would encourage people to, if they've tried counseling and, hey, I've had a counselor and it didn't work out, try a new counselor, but find someone who is suitable and who can, almost want to say, match your energy, right? But I think that is important for counselors. Like I said, we do this because we're passionate about this. We do it because, right, we've had life experiences, and we want to show people that, hey, you can thrive. You can be better than your yesterday. For me, that is very important, that you don't have to settle, and you can live life and live it more abundantly while you're here on earth. So seek us out, seek us out, seek us out. That's my advice.
Everybody has a light. I love that, Crystal. And I thank you so much for joining me today on Social Impact Sundays at 6, the Social Work Movement edition. I am Lequita Brooks, your social impact speaker and strategist. And if you're looking for a speaker for any upcoming events, make sure you go to booklequita.com. Until next time.